Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Atheist Roundtable. We're excited for another episode, and for everyone so far that's checked us out and that's listened, we appreciate you. And as always, please, it's the popular thing on YouTube to request you to smash that button, whatever that is. Just smash it.
And the bell, right?
Yeah, hit
Make
the
sure that
bells and
bell's
the
ringing.
hit the subscribe button. And share it with your friends and your family, and even if you hate them, go ahead and share it anyway. But share away. But we are very excited to have a good friend of ours on here tonight. Steve, first and foremost, thanks for taking the time to be on with us tonight.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Not a problem. I'm truly looking forward to getting in this conversation with you, and I think it's going to be a good time. And for introduction purposes, obviously, my name is Austin, and Mike is taking care of final exams tonight, so he could not be with us. And I know he wishes he could be here. He loves this as much as I do. But
go get it, Mike.
He's been kicking ass. Yep, he's been kicking ass, and super proud of him. And he's been really stoked about his results so far. So, Mike, keep grinding, and I know we'll have you back on here in the next day or two. But for those tuning in, we'll have this tonight, and then Friday night we have some more special guests coming on. We'll go live, and we'll have some more announcements on that later. But for right now, this is all about Steve. So, Steve. First of all, I always like to start out with some get to know you questions. That way myself and the listeners can continue to get to know you. So first of all, we know your name, but share a little bit, about you. Where are you from?
I'm from Minnesota, born and raised, if you couldn't tell by the accent. And
it's the funny part is all the people in the group that we chat with and we chop it up with. It's funny because I always think that you and I have the smallest accents compared to like Pasta and all them, but then I always hear opposite from other people, like, oh, you and Steve, you can tell you're from the Midwest. I'm like, what? I didn't know Midwest people had an accent, but
well, it's so obvious there. Don't you know that, bud?
I guess I don't hear it. I get accused all the time of being from the South, and I was like, I spent some time in Texas, when I was younger.
You do have a little bit of a Texas twang to you, for sure. I don't know if it was being raised in Christianity or if it has to do with living in Texas for a little bit, but
it's probably that dogma.
All that dogma. Oh boy.
But no. So what? They're in that lovely state, and I've been there a few times. What do you do there? What do you do there, Steve?
Oh, I'm an HVAC technician. So,
okay. How long have you been doing that?
I've been doing it about 3 years. Okay. And I was in school 4 years ago for it. Kind of chose it as a career path.
Okay. Is it something you love to do it, or you like to do it?
Super fulfilling. I wake up in the morning. Honestly, the only times that I wake up in the morning and I'm like, I got to go to work is when it's slow and I got to sit around the office doing nothing. It's nice that I get paid for doing that. A lot of the guys in the field get laid off. But my boss is a gracious, good guy. And he's definitely willing to make sure that we can get our hours and stuff, even when it's slow. But sitting in that office all day and not hustling, not working is it's like torture. I'm a busybody.
Oh, I bet I can't. But that's one thing I love about being in sales is no one day looks like the next day. And it's unpredictable.
Exactly.
Yeah, and I love that. And I know in your field it's very similar. I have a couple buddies that own businesses in your field, and they say the same thing. Where it's like you just, when you wake up in the morning, you don't know what's around the next corner.
Yeah, sometimes it's a rough day, but that's life. But no, I love what I do. I solve puzzles all day, and I solve people's problems all day, and I make people smile, and that I'm kind of I really enjoy helping people, and I love that I can do that with my job.
No, that's awesome. Well, and I appreciate HVAC technicians and people in general, because I'm the type, anybody that knows me, I hate being hot. Like I detest being hot. So if my AC goes out, I'm one pissed asshole. And so when people like you show up, it's like, oh, I'm here to fix the AC. You're you're the universe to me at that point. It's like, yes, fix that AC because I need to be I need to be cold.
Not all heroes wear capes, right, bud?
Exactly.
um,
So tongue
hey,
in
and
cheek,
and
HVAC guys, if my AC goes out, are God in my life.
hey, and by the way, if you ever need anything, you know how to get a hold of me. I
Absolutely.
I, I may be able
Absolutely.
to save you a trip charge sometimes, so let me know.
Nope. I appreciate it. Absolutely. So for those that have watched the Atheist Roundtable, my first two or three, I can't remember what we posted so far, two or three episodes, you kind of know the routine, so to speak. And I love the approach that we've selected, and it's more of getting to know people, whether it's theist, atheist, agnostic, whatever, that we can open up a forum to where we can just have a conversation. That doesn't mean tough questions aren't asked. It doesn't mean that it doesn't get heated or passionate, but it's not. And we'll have debates just like we had the other night with Landon and Mike, and we'll have those. And those are their own separate entities, so to speak. The roundtable presentation is more of the relationship building, get to know people, and continue on an ongoing basis, challenging from a epistemological stand or a point of view, to continue to challenge that and make each other better, sharpen each other, and challenge that. So, Steve, before we get into the how, or ultimately the why you are where you're at today, just give us a brief kind of snapshot of your story, your life story, how life got started for you, and where you're at today.
Well, without getting into too many details, my parents met each other, et cetera, et cetera. And then they had my sister, and she's about 3 years older than me. And then they actually had a miscarriage in between, and then me. So I was kind of a yeah, I know all the details. I was kind of a second chance. Um, had my older brother been born, I probably never would have. So that's kind of an interesting start. Um, but I suppose I'll kind of get in. I'll jump ahead a little bit, and basically, the way that I was raised, I was basically raised by a couple of people who were raised as Christians and had later become essentially atheist or agnostics. And my mom she kind of lost her faith in college when she started studying theology in general. She took a theology class, and that kind of showed her a bunch of different religions and their beliefs, and she saw all the similarities and said, all these people believe the same way that I believe in something that's totally different, that has different details. What makes mine more realistic or more reasonable than their belief? And once she started questioning that, it was kind of she kind of dropped out of the faith, I suppose. So she raised me to be super skeptical and not even to take her word for anything, and to do the research for myself. If I decide to be a Christian or Muslim or pagan or whatever, she was going to accept me and know that that was just a part of my journey. So from there, in my younger years, we had some pretty. I'm pretty sure. I mean, obviously, I don't know the details because I was young, but evangelical Christians living next door, and they were very nice people, great neighbors, and but they were pretty concerned about our souls, me and my sister, and invited us to come to church. So we ended up with them a few times, and my sister and I went to Sunday school, and I believe she was 9 and I would have been about 6. And we kept asking the Sunday school teacher questions. And as those questions got more and more difficult for her to answer, eventually we actually got kicked out of Sunday school and we weren't invited back. We were considered a danger to the other children. So that was kind of the end of the journey for Christianity in the beginning of the years, anyhow.
So sorry to stop you. So
Yeah.
you and your sister got kicked out of Sunday school.
Yes. Yeah. For asking too
Okay.
many questions, we posed a threat to the other children.
And what kind of questions?
I was pretty young at the time, but I do remember some kind of Noah's flood stuff that we
Oh,
didn't
boy.
really understand. And yeah, the the questions that we asked about how the logistics would work, and I mean, I guess we were kind of sharp little a-holes as kids. So
Good for you.
we figured out a way. Yeah, we figured out a way of frustrating. Well, if you know my mom, she will drive you nuts with the questions that she asks, but she always wants to be as clear as possible and understand things to the best of her ability. Always. She will never ever assume anything, which is a thing that I really respect about her too. And those questions can get kind of obnoxious. I'm sure if she watches this, she'll be laughing right now. But but it's super important. I mean, if you don't get the details, if you don't ask questions, how do you know what's going on for real? And all those nitty gritty detail questions can sometimes expose the truth from a lie. I'm sure that everybody has had experiences in their daily lives where, even if it's with your kids or something like that, oh, well, it almost seems like there's a couple of cookies missing from the cookie jar. Oh, I wouldn't know anything about that. Oh, you wouldn't, would you? You keep asking questions, eventually you're going to catch something, something that just doesn't quite fit right into the puzzle. But and that doesn't always mean everything, but sometimes the simplest answer is just the answer. I'd say that's a pretty good rule to follow. Especially after getting over my conspiracy days, but I suppose we'll get to that later. Teaser.
That could be a whole nother video.
We can do hours, bud. I'll tell you all about that Illuminati and those lizard people, and oh my gosh, even the what is it, the Bermuda Triangle, and time shifting, and oh man, it goes crazy. But we'll get to that, and we'll get to where epistemology saved me from conspiracy theories. So,
well, thank Buddha. Thank Buddha for epistemology.
yeah. Praise science. Science, damn it. Sorry, that's a South Park bit anyway. I'm just stealing it.
I love South Park.
I know, right? Gosh, I feel like our generation's morality is just about based around South Park, which seems horrifying. It seems horrifying, but it's really not. It's the Kyle speech at the end that we all listen to, right?
It's really not. If you take it as a whole, it's really not. But people are scared of it because
they knew what the hell
it's so controversial. But
well, yeah, I mean, they were free. They were practicing freedom, and you can't be mad at that. Well, you can be mad at it because you have the freedom to do so.
I know what you mean.
Yeah.
Cool. Anything else you'd like to share?
Well, as far as that kind of portion, not really. Other than that, I lived a pretty secular life. I suppose high school times were kind of rough. I did get bullied a lot throughout the process in school and all that kind of stuff. And that's, not an atypical story. So, but a lot of that did shape who I am today, of course. As the brain develops and as we have experiences, our brain kind of wires itself around those experiences for the sake of survival. Mm-hmm. Looking back on a lot of those things and all that kind of stuff, it's easy to rationalize things that way. But in any case, getting on into middle school, high school, I was in Boy Scouts. That was kind of my big thing. Did some sports here and there, stuff like that. And I did end up attending many church services through Boy Scouts. We did a lot of volunteering at the church. We did a lot of, we had our meetings at a church, things like that. A lot of times we hosted things or helped usher for things for the church, and ended up sitting in on a lot of church services. And I got to say, just about every time I sat in there, I heard something that the pastor said that applied to my life, and that was beneficial to me in that moment. Which could be compelling to some people as evidence that God exists, or that the Bible is true. Um, Although when you think about how that applies with all kinds of things, if you're just vague enough, like fortune cookies, right? Or your horoscope, things like that. If you keep it just vague enough, it can apply to just about anybody. Something to keep in mind. Um, I'll get off my soapbox, but at the same time, I think when I was about 14 or so, 15, my dad got really into Native American spirituality, specifically Lakota Dakota, and he got really really into that, and fell in with a group um, where they did sweat lodges and other kind of like spiritual ceremonies and stuff like that. And I learned a lot about and I ended up, being a part of those groups, and doing those ceremonies and participating. And, I was named, adopted by a Lakota family, which is kind of a traditional um, thing of honor, I guess, within the communities. Um, so during that time, um, there was a lot of talk of spirituality, and a lot of talk about quantum physics and quantum mechanics, and how the indigenous people kind of knew what was going on, and this is how they tied their understanding of reality with mythology. So the way that they explained it was very compelling, and really tied to what was going on, what was really hot in science at the time, which was the quantum mechanics and quantum physics. And um I really dove in with that stuff, and took those little leaps that you had to take at the time, to justify belief in like spirits, and spirit guides. And we didn't really believe in like devils or demons, but there could be negative energies, or energies that had bad intentions or something like that. So essentially, I had a belief in the supernatural, and I witnessed a lot of really compelling things that a lot of other people witnessed alongside me, and we could all share stories about what we saw, like certain lights in sweat lodges, or we would see figures of kind of almost like shimmering light, and then in your head you would see what that looked like, and we could describe it to each other, and it would be the same description, things like that. So all I can say for sure at this point is that I had a lot of really, really weird experiences, and a lot of very strange shared experiences that I have no explanation for. At the time, um, I just accepted what was asserted to me about those
Mhm.
experiences. So, and that's a huge, it was a huge realization for sure. Um, that I was having these crazy experiences that apparently everybody can have. Um,
Mhm.
and some of which can be shared. And instead of saying, wow, that's quite a phenomenon, let's investigate this and let's see if we can figure out exactly what it is, or where it comes from, or whatever. Let's eliminate all the possibilities that we know that we can eliminate. I just accepted what was asserted to me by people who sounded like they knew what they were talking about.
Mhm.
And not only that, but a lot of it was being backed by science. Um, until I really I started diving into brain studies a lot. And I started diving deeper and deeper into the quantum world and the quantum mechanics theories and all that kind of stuff. And I slowly kept kind of distancing myself from that group. Not that they're not still great friends of mine to this day, wonderful people and great people to hang out with. And I still have relationships with them, but just not within that world or within that belief system. They're all very accepting people. But I just couldn't buy it forever, you know?
Yep. Well, and,
And
and a lot of that sounds eerily or very familiar to what someone like myself coming from a Christian background. It's the same, that
you're just assertive
mass,
things and you accept them.
yeah,
Yeah.
the mass, that mass appeal or that mass hallucination, you know, I'm trying to mass experience.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
hallucinate, I can't even fucking say it.
Hallucinations.
There you go. Thank you.
Yes. Anytime.
But I was listening to an episode of Talk Heathen just earlier today
Yeah.
while I was doing dishes and stuff, and they actually were talking about that when you're in a big group like that, our memories suck. Like even the people with the best
Yes.
memories, your memories still suck.
Yes.
And all of a sudden you have a group of people saying, "Oh, well, I remember this, and I remember this," and you start piecing it all together, and it's like, "Oh yeah, I remember that." Now all of a sudden that's one solid memory that was actually never real. And that's that's what happens with any
It happens all the time.
spirituality, faith, religion, that kind of thing. So yeah, it's all along the same premise. So
Well, and that's why eyewitness testimony is pretty much trash. I mean, any courtroom
Yeah.
you go to, they take it with a grain of salt because they know that memory is so fleeting like that.
yeah, eyewitness testimony used to be the most critical testimony. Now
Yeah.
it's kind of laughed at. Yeah,
It's pretty much disregarded at this point. And people can fabricate things. I mean, it gets ridiculous.
yeah,
But yeah, and not only that, but when you're trying to describe something like what we experienced, and when you're trying to really get into details, those details are even vague. I could say I saw a figure, and in my head, I saw a 5-year-old girl with a floral pattern dress. Instantly, what do you get in your mind? Boom. That floral pattern dress could have been red or green. It could have been, she could have had blonde hair or brunette hair. She could have had blue eyes, brown eyes, green eyes, whatever. You can't get into all those details, not only from such a vague picture in your head, but when you're trying to describe something, it's so easy to get all that stuff mixed up anyway,
Mhm.
and so technically, if you start getting into detail, we could have not been seeing the same thing at all.
Yep. And usually that's what it's going to boil down to. Is you're just
Right.
taking a bunch of stories and you're putting it into a cluster.
And the power of suggestion is so powerful. It's
Don't
so
get me started.
powerful.
I use that in my career in sales all the time. The power, especially silent
Yeah,
suggestion,
yeah.
is
I've done some
so
sales.
powerful. Yeah, and I know one of the reasons that I'm successful is I know the power of suggestion,
Mhm.
even silent suggestion. So, Steve, I appreciate you sharing all, especially the depth you went to. So briefly, this could probably be a sentence or two, but through your life experience navigating and going, from each spot in your life, each season of your life,
Mhm.
where are you at today as far as your worldview, religious view? How do you, I guess, how do you identify today?
Sure. So this kind of leads me to the end of the story, really. Basically, uh, I ended up, working where I am today, and 2 years ago, um, my evangelical Christian uh, my evangelical Christian coworker was telling me that the Earth is 6,000 years old, and that carbon dating and stuff is very flawed, and all that kind of stuff, and to look into it. And I consider myself a pretty open-minded guy who I'm always willing to take in new information. The more that I can learn about the world and the more things that I can learn about what's going on around me, the better off I feel I am. And I'm just kind of a curious guy anyway. So whether I believe something or not, I still want to learn about it. That's where the conspiracy theory stuff got in. But luckily, my better epistemology got me away from all that as well at the same time, actually. But so he challenged me to look all these things up and all that kind of stuff. And I started looking into young Earth theory. And I got to be honest, there was some stuff that was kind of compelling. And I was like, wow, this is actually, really interesting. And most of it was picking apart the radiology, or not radiology, but carbon dating. And I think it is radial dating or something like that. But anyway, it was kind of picking that apart and just saying, therefore, the Earth was 6,000 years old. This science isn't perfect, so my claim is right. And I didn't realize that kind of mental trick that was happening until I stumbled upon the Atheist Experience with, put on by the ACA. The Atheist Experience completely changed my life when it came to my epistemology, the way that I view the world, my skepticism, and my seek for the truth, my honest, real seek for the truth, which is why I asked so many questions, more than I ever did. So in watching that show, I learned a lot about what kind of questions to ask, what kind of standards of evidence to use to really discern reality, and everything just made sense. And I got to say, Matt Dillahunty and Tracy Harris, I know they're kind of not all there now, but Tracy Harris and Matt Dillahunty were definitely my favorite people on that show. And just hearing Matt and his no, fucking no, all that shit really got me thinking and got me being critical in the way, like, yes, sure, science is flawed. Provide evidence for your claim. I'm not making one. The only claiming that I'm making is what my belief is, and my belief is I don't know, and that's okay not to know. It's the most honest answer that I can give with a non-falsifiable claim, like a God claim, right? And that stuff just was, and I'll tell you what, it had such a calming effect on me because of the climate of the world right now, and all the conspiracy theory, like fear mongering stuff and all that bullshit. It was so calming to me to hear rational people speaking logically and rationally for the first time in a long time. It was quite like I could fall asleep like a little baby with my thumb in my mouth for the first time in a long time, just appreciating and soaking in the reason and the logic and stuff like that. So my epistemology just kind of got better and better. And I guess what led me here is through TikTok. I guess winter got boring and I was like, screw it, I'll just try this app out, right? And then got sucked in like everybody else, like a fool. But then eventually I kept seeing more and more and more Christian content. And it got to the point where, because I'd been watching this show for a couple, or like a year at this point, I suppose, I couldn't keep my mouth shut, especially after learning, like, I used to be a lot more just let them believe, they're not hurting anybody. I never really saw a lot of the kind of things that go on that are very harmful, because I didn't pay a whole lot of attention to it. But once my attention was drawn there, I couldn't keep my mouth shut anymore. And I hate to see other people suffering and hurting. And any belief that causes that, I think, is a detriment to society and a detriment to our ability to move forward as a human race, So I had to get a little bit more outspoken, started commenting more on TikTok, and eventually started making videos. And here we are. So
here we are.
Yeah.
No, and I you and I have talked about this in the past.
Sure.
As far as our experience with the Atheist Experience, and Matt is I will forever, as long as I live, be grateful for Matt Dillahunty, and even the chat room right now, a couple of comments, and I totally respect him. There's there are some quirks with Matt, and Matt can rub people the
He
wrong
can be
way,
kind of a dick.
and but you know what, I hear the same thing all the time, and
We're all
if you,
human.
and I'm not well, yeah, one, there's the human, just the human aspect, the human element, but when you come from the kind of backgrounds that Matt comes from, that I come from, you're just a little, you get a little shitty.
I
when
get it.
when people try to continue the same manipulation or lies or bullshit, and that's not me, and I don't mean that any shot towards any Christian theist, anything like that, because obviously we've proven on the round table that we can sit down and have great conversations, and not every Christian's out to cut somebody's throat and send them to hell. I get that, but like Matt doing that show for 20 damn years, he's, and I've heard of, you've heard it, he hears some really ignorant shit,
God.
and it
just
just
laugh sometimes when he goes off.
Oh,
It's like, yeah, I get him.
There's
When people
times
try
that
to
I sit back
justify
and
slavery and shit, it's just like, shut up.
there's times that I want to put my head through a wall, and my girlfriend, she's the most patient human being I know, and she's like, how do you guys listen to this stuff all day long? The complete ignorance. But that's not the whole. That's not the whole. There are some very, very intelligent and well-spoken and thought out theists and Christians, and those are the ones that I want to engage and I want to have conversations with. It's the ones spewing the hate and the dogma. Those are the ones that Matt can't handle. I can't handle. You can't handle. I don't think most of us can handle. Again, listen to a couple of episodes of Talk Heathen. Today there's one lady that called in, and I mean it was pure ignorance, like zero logic, even on that side of the table. No logic, no reason, pure ignorance. Well, no wonder you get talked to a certain way.
Right.
Like,
yeah,
there's no intelligence involved. It's 100%. You're just spewing what you've been told without applying any logic or doing any type of study. So, but no, you and I have talked about that in the past. And the one thing before we go into kind of the what, Steve, is I want to point out, this isn't necessarily a question, but this is something I want to highlight, because I hope more parents have this approach or perspective with their children. As you said that your mother had raised you to be skeptical.
yes,
to view everything through a skeptical lens, and I love that. I love hearing that. And I just posted a video of Eric from Talk Heathen the other night on TikTok.
I saw that.
In regards to his mom calling in the show and telling him how proud she was, even though she was a Christian, how proud of him that she was, because he was doing what, he was on his path, he was on his road, and he was doing what he felt he needed to do, and how proud she was and his dad was of him. And man, that there's not very many times I get hit in the feels, but that one hit me in the feels, because my mother and I do not have that kind of relationship. It is violently different from that. So I just wanted to highlight that. And any mom and dad that see this, view this now or in the future, be that for your kids. We don't all have to look at life the same way, but support your kids and love them, because guess what? I didn't get to choose who my mom and dad were, just like they didn't get to choose who the fuck I was.
Just like you don't get to choose what you believe.
Yeah, so it's not, let's just love each other and support each other and try to have these conversations and drill down and figure it all out. So I just wanted to make sure, I wanted to make sure I highlighted that and said something about that, because I think that's huge. But the next question, Steve, before we get into the why, is how did you get here? Like you've shared some of it, but just briefly, since you dug into a big chunk of that, what was that? what was it? How did you get to atheism? You know, I know you shared Atheist Experience, and that was kind of the aha moment. But what was that aha moment? How did you get there?
Honestly, I think for the most part I was always atheist. I never really believed in a god. Even within that Dakota Lakota, belief system, they called it Tunkashila Wankantanka, which means, and of course my accent's probably terrible, but it essentially means the great mystery. So it doesn't necessarily, and I could be wrong. I could have been taught something that was not exactly following the original beliefs, but in any case, the circle that I was with, they called it the Great Mystery, and it didn't necessarily have an agency. Um, so it's kind of like when you're appealing to the Great Mystery, you're saying, well, maybe it's a god, maybe it's not, but we're gonna just kind of worship, or not even worship, but pay our respects to um, the mystery that got us here, whatever that is. Which is kind of a vague belief, but I think it's kind of an honest one too. Um, and again, anybody is definitely welcome to correct me on that. But in the circle that I was in, that's kind of the stance that they took. So, as far as an actual god or a being with agency that I would have believed, um, I'm kind of more agnostic about that now as a agnostic atheist than I was as a person who believed in the supernatural and in the spirit world. I was pretty much a Gnostic atheist, that a god did not exist, but that spirits existed. So I just kind of had one crazy belief instead of another. But at this point, as an agnostic atheist, I'm saying, well, I don't know. If sufficient evidence arises that would convince me that a god exists, then I'll be convinced. If I'm not provided with that evidence, then I'm just going to lack belief until that evidence is provided. And so I'm on my search. Right now, I'm doing a lot of asking of theists what their beliefs are, why they believe them, what's compelling about the evidence, and I'm kind of using that epistemology and going through those arguments and discussing it with them in a way that I'm trying to come to whatever truth that we can all recognize together. Because at the end of the day, obviously we have, like I said, I've done a lot of study on the brain. We all experience reality, at least in a different way. That doesn't only go for us as humans, but that goes for us as animals. Certain animals can see color, so certain can't, in different ways and things like that. And some animals smell things, and that's how they experience the world. So, and then you start getting into that quantum mechanics, quantum physics stuff, where it's like, holographic universe theory, stuff like that. Maybe we are just having the experiences with the real world inside of our mind, and everything that we touch, feel, experience is inside of our mind, but we're essentially floating around in this pool or ether of energy and cells, and you know what I mean? RNA and DNA and DMT, and experiencing a giant hallucination together that we can all kind of agree on based on our perceptions being close enough to understand each other. Or maybe there really is a solid world out there, that we're all experiencing, and we all just perceive it differently, but we all experience it the same. So at this point, I'm going with, as grumpy old cuss is saying, the only real honest answer, which is I don't know.
Yep.
And it feels great to come from a standpoint where you know that you are right for a change. I know without a doubt that I don't know. I can prove it.
Yep. My my constant position, or quote unquote argument, if you want to call it an argument, is I don't know. And if you claim to know, you are an arrogant bastard.
Yeah.
because there's no way that
Nope.
there's just no
Not
way.
through good evidence or epistemology at all.
No, no, not at all.
And
And that's
logic
why
doesn't
I,
equal truth.
yep. And Grumpy, I think that's, I don't think, I know that is a stance that as adults, all of us need to have more often in life.
Yes.
As we just
Even
say,
with our kids.
not even to do with religion, but just in life is, I don't know.
Yes.
Let me see if I can find the answer.
Yes.
Because too many times we want to pretend like we have the answer, when what happens is when you when you pretend to think you have the answer and you give it and then you end up being wrong, how many people did you fuck up in the process? Whether it's
Not
and
only
again,
that,
take
but
religion out of it, with your kids, your employees, any of it. When you pretend to know something that you don't know, how many more people did you delay their process or stunt their growth or whatever, simply because you pretended to have an answer? Whereas if you said, I don't know, let's find that answer together, guess what? Both of you grew. Both of you got better. Instead, we have a bunch of, and again, religion aside, just talking in general, instead, we have a bunch of arrogant assholes that just went, oh, well, here's the answer, when you didn't even know that was the answer. So just do the responsible thing, the intelligently honest thing, and say, I don't know, let's figure it out.
exactly.
Period.
Yep. And how many true things have you passed up in just saying I know when you didn't? That's something that I struggle with my stepson all the time, because he's,
Absolutely.
I'm such a freaking know-it-all, and I've done all the gosh darn research, right? So I'm able to just kind of pose claims, and I have all the evidence to back it up. So now he's starting to assert himself in the same way about wild shit, and I'm like, whoa, 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 whoa. Cite your sources, bud. We need to know where this is coming from. I am fairly certain that dragonflies don't have hippopotamus legs. Let's look into this real quick. But you're right. We always do go to, let's research this a little bit more so that we can get a better understanding. Not, you're wrong. Let's make sure that we're figuring it out.
So Steve, real quick, I'm gonna put up on the screen, but I have quickly a funny question from one of our viewers for you.
Sure.
So I'm gonna put it up there. You read it, and you have 10 seconds to answer.
Oh boy. A scientist for Christianity against teaching science in schools. I believe that science is going to drag humanity down into the dumps. Pasta. Not at all. The scientific process is the currently known of most reliable pathway to the truth, right? To the best of our knowledge, science is the most reliable
as of today.
Yep.
As of today, absolutely.
Yep.
And like we all say all the time, we want to know more true things than false things.
Exactly.
And we don't want to do, I don't, the greatest thing, and he didn't even mean it in a spiritual or religious context, because him and I always talk business. But my mentor always said, hope is never a good strategy.
Mm-mm.
And that applies here as well. Like, you can hope all this is real, but that's not a good strategy. The best strategy is it measurable? Can you measure it? Can you track it? And can you find an end result? Like, what is the end result? What is it that we're trying to define? And did we find a definition? And that's the one thing that blows my mind is you talk to certain people, whether they're theists or just in everyday life, whatever their worldview is, that they don't understand. Like, the scientific process is the scientific process for a reason. It's the most stable, reliable way to prove, to demonstrate that something is real or it's not real, or at least suggest that it is.
It's just the process of disproving.
And again, my mentor always said, common sense is not common practice. So
correct. And it's not common sense.
Yeah.
Um, well, and even touching on, I know that you and I have talked about hope before, and I still use hope, of course, on things that I have absolutely no control over. Like, um, I'll go to the doctor, get a scan, and hope it comes back good, you know? And um, I'm hoping that the economy turns back around, and there's certain things that in my life that I am hopeful for, but I don't take that to the bank at all. If there's anything within
And,
my control, I'm making moves.
and without me sounding like a pessimist,
Yeah.
I'm a little different there because I don't hope. I've always went to the doctor. I've always been, even though I smoke like a chimney and I drink all the time. Like my doctor, his mind is blown all the time. He was like, dude, all the shit you've done to your body and your insides still look like you're 15 and healthy, you know? So the history says that I'm good. Like I don't need to hope. Like it is like history demonstrates that I'm good, you know? And as far as the economy, even you go back to without getting
Well,
into
yeah,
history
it's a
lessons,
fact.
but like everything proves
It
itself,
has to. Yeah.
it always it does, and the
People
day
are
I
gonna go
die,
back to
it's
work, and then things are
yeah.
gonna turn back around.
Well, and it's like, I mean, well, don't you hope you get out of bed in the morning you're alive? Well, no, I've done that for 38 years, and if it doesn't happen, it just doesn't happen. Like I don't
And I'm
hope
just
for it.
thankful
It
when
just
it
is what
does. Being
it is
thankful,
what
though.
it is, you know.
Being
Now,
thankful,
great,
though, is
yeah,
important.
great. Having gratitude and thankfulness are two
Yeah.
completely different things.
Yeah.
But me hoping that happens, no, I have demonstrable history and evidence that says that I'm going to get up in the morning, and if it doesn't happen, it didn't happen,
So
But I don't
so your
hope like it's not
definition
something I hope for.
your definition of hope would be more like my definition of confidence.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I'm very confident that my scans at the doctor are going to be good because even all
Perfect.
the abuse I've put on my body, my doctor says I'm still healthy as a 15-year-old boy. I've gotten out of bed through all that every morning for 38 years, and if it doesn't happen, then it was my time.
Well, isn't it wonderful how definitions can just wrap a conversation up in a nice, neat little bow?
But let's not go Bible versus dictionary. No, I'm kidding. Um,
Yeah, right.
let's let's get in the final question here, Steve.
Sure.
So we talked about your life story and kind of how you have arrived to this place, and I'll have some questions here for you at the end, but I want you to take 5-10 minutes just on your own, and I want you to really zero in on atheism. So
Mhm.
we've already talked about the past. So where you're at today, take 5 or 10 minutes, and why. We've talked about epistemology. Why are you where you're at? Why do you have this lack of belief in a God?
Sure. Oh gosh. That's actually kind of a tough one to think about, to be honest. I mean, I really never had one to begin with. I was never indoctrinated into anything. Uh, I was taught to explore and learn as much about the world as I possibly could. Um, and nowhere in my um, nowhere in my studies throughout my life have I ever felt compelled to believe that a God exists. I mean, I guess besides fleeting moments here and there, maybe I guess there's kind of always those jokes that people say. Um, when an atheist's back is against the wall, they'll start praying to God or something like that. And I've had a couple of moments, I suppose, like that throughout my life where I was kind of wishy washy. Um, and like I said, I did believe in the supernatural a little bit until the atheist experience ruined all that. So honestly, I don't think I need even 10 minutes for that one, unless if I just want to be a windbag about nothing. But I really haven't found. a reason to believe in a God. And honestly, I think now more than ever, my stance as an agnostic atheist or an atheist is stronger than ever. But at the same time, I'm more open or feeling more accepting, besides, really trying to accept in certain moments. But as a whole, feeling kind of more overall accepting of the idea of it, um, in within that realm of I don't know. I'm no longer kind of a Gnostic about or saying I know for sure that a God doesn't exist. I'm now more open, saying if something convinces me, I could be convinced. Um, and I've definitely taken some moments to try and, like, all right, I'm gonna really believe in it. I'm gonna give it a shot for sure. I'm gonna do the best I can to possibly really believe in it. But belief is it's a really hard thing to fake, and I think that if a God existed, he would know when you were faking it anyway. So, there would be kind of no point in doing that. Um, but yeah, just haven't found the compelling evidence yet. So, in the 2
Okay,
years, I suppose.
so being a former Christian, I'm
Mhm.
going to switch hats
Yeah.
and I'm asking some questions. Okay.
Okay.
Um, so, and I did not, in our pre-call, I did not prep you for this on
Yeah, you
purpose.
did not.
So,
You gonna
um,
convert me? I hope you can convert me back.
um, so, so my first question would be, so Steve, I've listened to the entire podcast, and I've heard you share several different experiences um, of spirituality, or just some feel good stories
Mhm.
that you've had. Um, but how do you know, Steve, through all that? How do you know that when you experienced those things or went through those things, how do you know that you did not experience the one true God?
I don't.
And how do you not know that? Like you told me that you had a group of people around you that experienced the same thing as you did, felt
Mhm.
the same thing you did, um, had all the same feel goods you did. Why is that not a God?
I don't have reason to believe that it's a God. It could have been, I mean, who knows? It could have been interdimensional time travelers that were appearing, and those little lights that were flashing where they're popping in and out of our existence or something. Could have been something happening in the quantum world, because we already know that in the quantum world, uh, electrons do pop in and out, and they kind of appear and disappear and reappear. And it could have been sparks from the hot rocks that were in there. It could have been a shared weird brain state experience. I mean, until we eliminate all of those possibilities, once we do that, and or if we can come up with something very compelling, if God wants to come down and assert himself right now and say, yeah, that was me, uh, as long as it's compelling enough, I suppose I'd be convinced. But that hasn't happened yet. And I mean, there's so many other possibilities that we really have to rule out before we can really accept a claim, right?
Okay,
I had a weird
so
experience though.
so so then Steve, from as a theist,
Oh, I lost you for a second there.
uh, what evidence would you need? What standard of evidence would you need to cause you to believe in a God?
What evidence would I need? I don't know. There's a whole lot of I don't know up in here. Um, I don't know what would convince me. I've been presented with a
I don't
lot
think
of
they'll love Steve.
evidence. I've been presented with a lot of evidence. I've been presented with a lot of claims, for sure, mostly claims. And I have not been convinced yet. Um, I do have a prayer experiment that I keep trying to do with people on TikTok, but they keep saying that you can't challenge God and you can't pray for God to expose himself. So um, I guess that's out the window. So there is one experiment that would convince me of a specific God if that specific God could achieve what I ask somebody who claims that their God answers their prayers could do. Although it would be nice if he would just answer mine, but I don't have the ability of opening, I guess, my heart enough, I've been told. So I ask people who already have their hearts open if they can do that experiment for me to and man, it would be so well documented too. Oh, there would be timestamps on the TikTok posts prior to it happening. It would be a weather event, so it would be something that would be totally unseasonable too. So it would be in the news and all that kind of stuff. And I could tell all my atheist buddies, like, dude, God is real. This shit is real for sure. See, here's all the evidence, and they would believe it. So there's a potential of converting a lot of atheists real quick with this prayer experiment. I think anyway. Although they some of those atheists that I know might just call me an asshole, but
Well, I'm used to that.
yeah, I know, right? As an atheist, you kind of have to be used to being called an asshole. The world is not nice to atheists, especially those of us who are open about it.
So, Steve, how familiar are you with Frank Turek?
I have actually been turned on to Frank Turek recently, and I watched a couple of his videos, the ones that were recommended to me by a buddy of mine on TikTok. And the problem that I had with Frank Turek, if I'm remembering correctly, is that there was a lot of you really had to be a believer already. You had to presuppose that a God existed. And that whole thing is just problematic. First, you have to present evidence that the supernatural can exist, is possible, and then you can prove that it exists, and then you can get into the nitty-gritty details of what God we're talking about. So there's kind of a long way to go before any God claim can be accepted. And presupposing just it doesn't work for me. It's another problem I had with Case for Christ and a lot of the other kind of books that presuppose that a God exists, essentially. The Bible.
Okay, so Steve, as a believer, I just don't understand how. And pause. Any Christians or theists that watch this, I'm not being a smartass. Like growing up in this, these are the questions that we ask. So please don't take this as sarcasm. Like I'm doing this on purpose. That's part of the round table. So unpause.
For what it's worth, I've heard all these already.
Yeah. So Steve, I just don't understand how you or any human can get out of bed in the morning and get up and go outside to go to work and see the creation and the beauty around us, the trees and the birds, and all the beauty that surrounds us. And it's so complex, Steve. It's so complex that there has to be a designer. We couldn't have just done this on chance. There couldn't have just been this big bang and all this stuff just happened. So how do you rationalize that? Like, how do you do the gymnastics in your mind that you get down to just an explosion and a bang rather than there being an intelligent designer?
Yeah, it's almost like you're walking on a beach and you see a watch laying there, right? So essentially this can get kind of detailed. I think that's First of all, appearance of design doesn't necessarily mean design, right? We have to be able to demonstrate a designer. We have to be able to say, I've seen this as a design before. I know that this is something that necessarily is designed. Like I was saying with the watchmaker argument, you can walk on the beach and you'll see a watch and you'll recognize, yes, that it is designed because it's a watch. But that's because we already know that watches must be designed. They don't happen naturally. If you're going to talk about the natural world, and say that it has been designed, and to you it may have the appearance of design, to me the natural world honestly looks kind of chaotic. Um, but especially when you get into the quantum world and stuff like that, and physics and things. But if you are looking at the world and saying, man, every that was designed so perfectly, there's no way that anybody could have, or there's no way that it could have just happened randomly or by chance. Oh, and by the way, you said something about, you kind of hit me with a lot of questions. So, um, but I don't really make a claim on Big Bang cosmology because I don't know enough about it. I don't necessarily accept Big Bang, even though I know it's been said to me that there's plenty of evidence and science points that direction. I just don't even go there. I'm more interested in kind of the theistic argument than Big Bang cosmology. But anyway, appearance of design doesn't necessarily require a designer. So what we would have to do with nature is go out and find a planet that was designed, that we know was designed, and that we can point to a designer for, and compare that to our world and then see if they're similar or not. But because we don't have that, or universe or whatever, I mean, you can go down the list. But because we don't have that capability, we can't assume that there's a designer. And based
Then
on the science of the world around us, or based on what science has discovered about the world around us, is a better way to put that.
well,
Especially when it comes to
then
evolution.
Steve, how you've talked a lot about epistemology tonight, so I'll kick that back on
Sure.
you with those statements. So then, how
It's
do
just a fancy
we
word, man. That's
how do we know how do we know anything? How do we know anything?
uh here's the deal. I do not believe in absolute truths. We can't know for sure anything because like I said before, when you get into the holographic universe stuff, it's possible that everything is a hologram anyway, right? And that the reality that we experience and that we understand isn't even real. However, there is an experience that me as a conscious agent, and seemingly everybody around me as conscious agents experience, and we all experience it together. um and I have to live and exist within the rules of that reality. Otherwise it has detrimental or positive effects on my either ability to survive or on my life, basically. um so I have to adhere to a certain, the laws of physics. I have to eat, I have to drink water, I have to sleep in order to sustain myself. There's certain things about the reality that I experience that I have to adhere to. So I live within the confines of that world, and I don't branch out beyond that unless if there's a reason to believe, or a reason to branch out beyond that, with good evidence and all that kind of stuff. So because I have to exist within this reality, I'm going to accept it for what it is. I'm not going to claim any absolute truth, but I'm definitely going to say that within the shared reality that we all have, there are certain truths that we all need to accept and live by.
Okay. Nope. Great answer. So now,
Yeah, I hope that was clear.
yep. No, that was great. So now I'm gonna go take my theist hat off and put my atheist
Whew.
slash friend hat on.
Well, praise
So
Jesus.
Praise the Lord. Um, so Steve, and this is a little more of a direct question for listeners and anybody that may be having questions or are kind of on the line,
Hmm.
between uh, theism and atheism, or maybe they just grew up in a household where they knew nothing and they're trying to figure out, what all this religion stuff is, and what does it mean to me? What does it not mean to me? What what would be your greatest piece of advice that you would give somebody that's searching, again, like I said, through a deconversion process, or they just don't know and they're searching? What would be, if there's one thing that you could, bit of advice that you could give them, what would that be tonight?
Apart from watching Atheist Experience and Talk Heathen on YouTube and watching the Atheist Roundtable, um, I would say work on your skepticism. If nothing else, just become a skeptic and don't accept any claim without deeply researching it yourself. And when I say deeply researching, I mean checking multiple sources. This goes for the news. Some people just watch CNN and they have one view of the world. Some people just watch Fox News and they have one view on the world. Some people watch everything: CNN, Fox News, um, you know, um, I'm sorry, C-SPAN, whatever. You can go down the list. I do a lot of online checking, double checking, Snopes. And I don't even take Snoops or Snopes or whatever it is. I don't even take their word for it. But don't settle with the first answer. Keep digging, and learn as much as you possibly can about every topic. Um, because you're going to find that you're going to go down this hole and you're going to learn and learn and learn and learn, and you're going to hit little speed bumps and stuff like that, and you're going to get little branches of different information and stuff, and you got to kind of follow those too. But ultimately, to get to the truth, you can't just settle with a claim without digging deep. And that's just kind of how I live my life. You could talk to my wife. I drive her crazy, going down all these crazy rabbit holes and stuff, and learning as much as I can and just spewing the information. And, it's very obnoxious, but it's how I figure out the world around me and the reality that we all experience. And I feel like I'm in a really good place with that right now. I kind of feel more at peace now than I ever have with not only the idea of death, but um, the whole understanding of my experience in general. And honestly, it's lended itself to me enjoying every moment of my life a lot more than I used to. There's no need to suffer, and there's no need to give yourself excuses to suffer. So make sure that you are doing the best to make the best life for yourself, regardless of what anybody tells you, for sure. I don't know. I I suppose I could stay on a soapbox all night and get all preachy and stuff, but that would be my quick takeaway.
No, that was great. And we for the Atheist Roundtable, we're always going to have a mix, of theists and atheists, and I always want to, give the same platform for the atheists as I do the theists, as far as, what would your final statement be, or
Hmm.
encouragement be to those that are listening, and I want to be fair in that. And obviously tonight it's two atheists sitting at the round table, but I always want to, again, make sure we're fair and consistent, across the board. Um, uh, because I'm opening up for questions here. So sorry, I got
Yeah.
a little
No,
distracted.
no.
Grumpy, if you could, let me know if, I'm not sure if that's a question for us as far as encouragement. Maybe rephrase it. I would love to be able to help you, because I am 100% familiar with the deconversion process and would love to help. Maybe you can rephrase that. But anybody right now that's on, we have a few listeners any questions, to do with theism, atheism, conversion, deconversion, experience, even, the biggest thing in my experience is how you handle family and friends,
Mm-hmm.
and what that looks like, because it can cause quite the turmoil with within that within that sphere of influence that you hold. Um, but well, here I'll just put up. We can talk about it. If he rephrases it, I'll pop it up here. Um, but my oh man, my cursor just went crazy.
Yeah,
So
I think I know what
my
he's saying.
skepticism is strong until I try debunking personal experiences. Then it gets harder. So
Well,
Steve, go
and
ahead.
that's where you just have to be comfortable with saying, I don't know. I have those same crazy personal experiences for sure. Even I know a lot of people that claim that they found God or whatever through psychedelics and stuff like that too. Brain states. The brain is such a crazy, fascinating thing. If you study into it enough, um, it's fascinating what the brain can do. So beyond a reasonable doubt, anything can be boiled down to a brain state or something happening within the brain. Um, but that is a crazy thing, especially those shared experiences. And you just have to be comfortable saying, I don't know, until you are able to provide sufficient evidence to pose a claim about what it was. And again, people can assert things to you. It doesn't make things true. They know just as much as you do at the end of the day, when it comes to those kinds of things. And a lot of times they're people, in my experience, they were people that you looked up to and all that kind of stuff, leaders and, um, you know, people who had all kinds of abilities. But um, yeah, it's really important just to be comfortable in that. I don't know. And I hope that was a proper answer to your question, Grumpy. I know we're friends on TikTok too, and we talk a little bit.
Yeah, and I'll say, and we haven't put any of it out there yet, but Pasta and Jesus did an interview with me a night or two ago on my deconversion process, and we talked a little bit about personal experience and the the things that I experienced, and I thought that I felt God, and I thought that I felt the Holy Spirit, and uh, like we talked about earlier in this podcast, the power of suggestion, it is unbelievable, is unbelievable. And there's so many things that my family and my friends wanted me to experience, and I so bad wanted to experience that for them more than even
Hmm.
for myself,
Yeah.
that it happened. And one night on one of our after parties, just putting it all the way out there, that we had a gentleman on and was talking about the Holy Spirit and speaking in tongues and all that. And I said, no, with all due respect, I'm going to call bullshit, because it's memorized, and I can
Mm.
still. I'm years removed from that now. I can still speak in the same tongue that I did in church right now.
Hmm.
It has nothing to do with the Holy Spirit. And I did it just to prove it. Like, it's memorized.
Right.
It's not something that the Spirit fell upon me and yada yada yada. And again, I'm not being disrespectful, but that is the power of persuasion and influence that has. So when it comes down to it, you can't, like, don't digress, or don't um, feel that your position or your stance as an atheist or a skeptic or a non-believer is any less valid because somebody says, well, you had a personal experience. Well, hold on, that's my personal experience, and now I'm telling you that personal experience was not valid. That was perpetrated by influence and suggestion.
Right.
So when you're going through that, don't bow to that. Don't bow down to that. That is, another manipulation tool used to try to suck somebody back in, and reel somebody back in. I can tell you right now, and I use this example many times now. I'm a musician. I love music, and I played drums in church for years and years and years. And I can't tell you how many times I had the goosebumps and all the feel goods, and lights are on. Again, I was in evangelical movement, but lights are on, fog machines going. I feel like I'm at a fucking concert, and all that's happening. And my favorite artist right now is Post Malone, and my girlfriend and I went to 2 of his live shows in the last 6 months or so, and I had the same goosebumps and the same feelings at the Post Malone concert, because that's my fucking dude, and I love his music as I did playing drums at a church. So was it the Holy Ghost? Was it God? Or, and Steve talked about it, and I've done tons of study on what religion does to the brain chemistry and the mental makeup, and how you think, and how you react. It's the same endorphins. It's the same reward center in the brain. And it triggers all the same reactions as sex and drugs and everything else. It's the same thing. And actually, religion, and you can go find it, and I need to post it because we talked about this last time, but there was a study actually done with Mormons, of all people, as far as, because they don't do all the live music like evangelicals do, but it triggered the same reward center, and the reason and logic part of their brain, the part of the frontal lobe, it actually, or I'm sorry, this part was in the back. It actually shrank it. It made it smaller. It made their ability to reason and logic smaller.
And
So what does
especially
that
when you're
tell you?
indoctrinated at a young age, which they always do. They start indoctrinating you right away. So your
Yep.
logic and reason is wired a certain way right away. And it's
Yep.
so hard to rewire the brain. Trust me, I know, I've done it.
Yep. And Grumpy, he's probably wrapping up at work. I saw you're getting off. You can hit us private message anytime, brother. We're here for you.
Yeah, of
So
course.
don't worry about that. All right. Before we wrap it up, anybody else have any questions? We got a few people left on there. Steve, got anything else to say?
Oh yeah, I was gonna say I did music for 10 years too. I was a musician, and
Oh, that's right.
yeah, there's a lot of that feel goodery going on, and we actually have a mutual friend, I believe, who is a drug counselor, I think, and he does hip hop, right? You know who I'm talking about? The Great Antithesis.
Oh yeah. Okay.
Yeah. And yeah, he straight up says religion is drugs.
Yep.
And he would know. He's the
And it's funny because before I ever met him or had any engagement with him for months, one of my hashtags on social media, not so much on TikTok, but like on Facebook and different places, my hashtag was religion kills.
Oh,
so think about what they say about drugs. Drugs kill.
Drugs kill.
And that's what, when I met him, I'm like, holy fucking shit.
Well, if that wasn't divine intervention, I don't know what is.
Praise the Lord. Yeah, but it's
I'll try not to get too snarky here.
Yeah, and that's why I always want to make sure anybody we are respectful guys, but we have our own life experience, just like you do. We have our own life experiences, and sometimes that brings out a little bit of the snarky asshole parts of us. But,
sometimes you just got to be able to laugh about things too. Yeah. Whatever you believe, you got to be able to laugh about shit.
Yeah, I mean, my pastor's a brother, and I'll poke fun at him all the time. Like, dude, you read a book where a bush just just combusted all of a sudden and started talking, so whatever. But
the other thing is, I ask a lot of people that say that they're Christians. I ask them, do you believe that unicorns exist? And that's always one where they say no, but they are mentioned in the Bible in Numbers, right? So
where's that at? Learn me.
I think Numbers 23. I think it's Numbers 23. They don't necessarily say that a unicorn is a thing, but they mention unicorns and the strength of unicorns and how strong they are. as compared to
So I
like
have our old
oxen and
trusty
stuff.
Bible here.
Yeah, I think it's
Oops.
Numbers 23. So somewhere in there. Here, let me. I wonder if it's popping up in the comments.
Oh, damn it.
Yeah, Numbers 23, 22, and Numbers 24, 8. The Bible speaks of the strength of a unicorn. Gosh, they talk about unicorns' horns in Psalms 92:10. They talk about unicorns a lot in the Bible, which we've all accepted to be a mythical creature that never existed at this point. But I think, you know, they forget that it's in there. And I know it's, you know, maybe it's a nasty little trap, but it's kind of like.
So, okay, I'm here now. Numbers what?
They're definitely mentioned Numbers 23, 22. 24, 8. I mean, there's actually a lot. It's in Deuteronomy. They're in Psalms.
All I need is one.
Isaiah.
23, 22, you said.
Yeah, Numbers 23, 22. Try that. I'm starting to sound like Jeff. Rifling off all the.
Oh, God damn it. Chapter 23, verse 22.
Yeah.
Yeah, and this version, because you know we got 10 million of them.
Yeah,
it doesn't say it there, but I'll look it up later. I don't waste anybody else's time. But cool. We'll wrap up.
Don't take my
we'll
word for it. Look it up.
Oh, for show. But Stephen, in closing, thank you for taking a seat at the Atheist Roundtable. Obviously, you are always welcome here, and we want your voice to be heard here. But is there anything that you would like to say in closing, sir?
I think I already gabbed enough.
Okay. All right. So for those that are listening now and will listen in the future, well, between now and Friday at 9 p.m., we will be going live, and I'm going to put some announcements and do some marketing and advertising. So I'm not going to put names out there yet, but we're going to have some incredible guests on Friday night, 9 p.m., and they are deconverts from Christianity, and we are going to have an intense conversation with them. It's going to be awesome. I'm super looking forward to that. And they have a podcast of their own, which I'll be posting that up later too, so you can go check out their material. But again, Steve, thanks for coming on, man. And just, you know, I know we tell you privately, but publicly, just so you know, we appreciate you, man. And you have a lot of good things to offer the community and people coming out of theism, and you're valued, you're appreciated, and we want you to know that.
Well, I appreciate that, and I love you guys.
Yep, absolutely, same here. So again, it's the Atheist. I almost said asshole. It's the it's the Atheist Roundtable. If you want to be a guest, hit us up. You can private message us. But my email is austin@tart.live. That's the easiest way to contact me and get there, or just go to tart.live. That's our website, and there's plenty of areas on there to be able to engage and come on the show. So in the meantime, we appreciate all the listeners. Thanks for everybody contributing tonight, leaving the comments, leaving questions, and we will talk to everybody soon. Peace out.
Peace.